All right, awesome. Thanks so much for hopping on. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited today to chat about this awesome topic of how to get 5-star reviews from couples. And so this is a fun topic because it's, when I was putting this together of like what I wanted to kind of chat about today, the answer is that it's really just not a simple one-liner answer. And really like the art and the science behind like an entire experience with a client resulting in a 5-star raving multi-paragraph review is not just like one thing. It's like tweak this one thing in your workflow and that will like solve the whole thing. That will like get you from getting no reviews to like amazing raving reviews. It isn't really just like a simple one-liner answer. It's actually, when I dug into this, trying to really thoroughly answer this question, I realized it's actually a huge topic. It's absolutely massive because we have to kind of zoom out a little bit and we have to talk about customer service as a whole, which I love talking about customer service. Also we have to zoom out and kind of look at our whole workflow as a whole, because there's so many moving pieces that result in how a client feels about working with you, which will dictate like if they review you, how they review you, what they say, how long their review is. And so like the truth that I've kind of come down to in the process of this topic is that 5-star reviews, they don't happen accidentally. And it isn't just like one small thing that you can tweak. It really, you have to kind of zoom out and look at the whole process, like your whole, a client's entire experience of working with you from the first time they contact you to like the last time they're in contact with you. It is really like an overwhelmingly, it's a huge experience that, spans anywhere for us for, 3 months to a year and a half. And so, yeah, it isn't just a simple, like, do this one thing and boom, you are good. So I'm going to talk about like some things related to customer service and workflow here today, because really kind of making sure that you have a strategic plan around how to give good customer service is huge. And so I am of the opinion that I don't think like amazing customer experiences happen accidentally. Like there's a strategy and there's careful planning in place. And I know that we've done a lot of strategy and careful planning around our workflow and how we design client experiences. And I think that's a huge part of why we have over 150 raving 5-star reviews across many different platforms, which I will get into how you get for those and where you should ask for those. Don't worry, I'll answer those questions too. But I'm going to zoom out a little bit first and talk about customer service. So, and again, throughout this, guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and just like drop them in the chat, and I will look at those too. So. Cool. So let's talk about customer service. So when it comes to like what is a client's experience with you, and in business and in customer service, there is stuff you can control and there's stuff that you can't control. And so when I talk about like having a strategic approach to your workflow and to customer service, we're talking about like what's on your side, what of like how you design your workflow and how you work with a couple that you can plan out in advance, you can strategize, you can have a really clear plan around to make sure that you're not just like sitting back hoping and waiting for a 5-star review to appear, because in my experience that sometimes happens, but it is so much more consistent and so much more effective to have like strategize this all and have a plan around it. So cool. So we're going to talk about customer service, about going above and beyond. We're going to talk about workflow. My course goes into like extreme depth of like designing a seamless elopement workflow. And it's all like designing your workflow is all about being strategic with how you go above and beyond. It's like your chance to plan, this is the expectation that I'm setting, and this is exactly how I'm going to exceed that expectation at every single step along the process. And over a year and a half of multiple contact points with a couple, that adds up to like, oh my gosh, my photographer went above and beyond and exceeded my expectations at every single step. And then we're going to talk about the nitty gritty of asking for reviews, like where you should ask for them, how you should ask for them, when you should ask for them, because all of those things play a big factor in like what those reviews looks like. So, okay, so diving into customer service as a topic, which is huge. I could easily do 5 live videos just talking about customer service. Is such an important topic. I know that I've probably said this quote in these videos before, but I'm so obsessed with it that I'm gonna read it again because it's my favorite quote about customer service. And it's from Maya Angelou, and it says, "I've learned that people will forget what you've said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I know controlling your clients' feelings, there's stuff that's in and out of your control, but at the end of the day, really creating a good customer experience and creating a feeling in a couple that's going to compel them to review you in a raving way is all about customer service. And it's really like the truth is like how a client feels about you, which is really subjective and really intangible. So this is kind of an interesting topic because there's so much of it that is out of your control and subjective and dependent on like what's going on with your client. And at the same time, I'm going to talk about like these are some strategic things that you can put into place that kind of meld and affect how your client feels about you. So it's such an interesting topic. I just love it. And so basically at the end of the day, how your client feels about their experience with you is going to determine everything, like how they feel about their photos. And how they feel about their photos has a lot to do with how they felt about you and they felt about the whole process with you, and like how they felt about themselves on their wedding day and like how they felt the experience was. And so bottom line, it isn't enough to deliver exactly what a client is expecting. That will get you like, average reviews. If you want raving reviews, you have to deliver more than they are expecting. And it's also not enough just to deliver good photos, and so I think as photographers, if someone were to ask you like what is the value that a client's getting out of working with you, there's probably a lot of photographers that would say, well, they get amazing photos. That's great. That is like kind of a minimum level of thing that people should be getting from you. But when I think it comes from a client feeling like, wow, someone went above and beyond, it has to be more than just photos. Because if your communication is terrible, if their experience of working with you, if you didn't help them feel great about themselves on their own wedding day, like at the end of the day, like what the physical photos look like at the end, it's not enough to only focus on that. You have to focus on the whole experience as a whole. It's not enough just to have good photos. And I'll be the first to say that like I am not perfect here, and I don't want anything that I say to come across as like I'm shaming or blaming or pointing fingers at anybody, because like learning how to give good customer service is a process. And I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. And I think the key here is to be open to learning and to have a heart of service at the end of the day. I'm always testing different ways of improving customer service. I'm always I'm always improving. I think, I don't see this as much in my Facebook group, but I see this in a lot of other photographer Facebook groups. Of course, like you can kind of talk bluntly here of like, I'm sure any of you guys who are in other photographer Facebook groups may see, just like there's always those posts that are just like complaining about clients and blaming clients and shaming clients, and a photographer asking like, hey, my client asked me this question, how do I respond? And then half of the responses are run away from questions. And so I have always felt, and like there are photographers creating amazing client experiences. Like I'm not the only one who cares about customer service, guys. Like there's a lot of people who care a lot about their clients. And if you're watching this video, you probably care a lot about how your clients feel about their experience with you, and you want to treat them kindly and fairly and educate them well and be a great and be an awesome photographer for them. But what I would love to change, if I could just wave a magic wand and change it in this industry, it would be around like shaming clients for asking questions. And like I think photographers like over assume like a normal person's knowledge of how the photography industry works, of how working with a photographer works, of how working with a wedding photographer works. And I know that there are always like those questions that like I think a lot of people consider as red flags, whereas in my mind it's like there's so many questions. You know, if someone's questioning something in your contract, it doesn't automatically mean that they're hashtag not your client. It doesn't. Sometimes it does, but I think in general, you know, some of the advice that I see running around in Facebook groups regarding customer service is like, man, if a client asks you a question, then run, like it's a red flag. Whereas for me, if a client is asking me a question, I always turn it around as like, okay, how can I explain this better? How can I educate this better? Is there something I can adjust in my workflow up front that would make this more clear? Is there a way for me to address this that's going to educate them kindly? Because the truth is they're not professional photographers. They don't know how it works. They don't know like what's okay and not okay to ask as a photographer. And I don't think like a client who never asks any questions is necessarily like the definition of a quote unquote ideal client. But anyway, and I would say the same thing about, you know, I've run into plenty of, you know, concerns and problems and, you know, a few unhappy clients along the way. And whenever I run into those situations, you know, I think it's my responsibility as a business owner to always like look at myself first and, you know, and say, okay, how could I have, you know, okay, this person is unhappy with this aspect of what happened here. You know, what could I have done better? How could I have more clearly set expectations? How could I have communicated better? And, you know, that is, you know, an approach to customer service that I've taken to heart over the last 10 years of being a professional photographer. And I think that it has really served me and my clients well. And so, you know, there's that old adage of like, the customer is always right. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone's heard that quote about customer service. And I don't like that adage specifically. Not that it's not like mostly true. What I like instead is the idea is that the customer's perception is your reality, because the truth is like customer service, it's not a black and white right or wrong thing. It's all like extremely it's all extremely subjective. But it's really important to know that if a client is coming to you and they're unhappy about something, or they're having a problem, or they're having a question, that's what's real for them. And, you know, I'm not saying that every client in the world is right and they're all going to be possible to please. And if an issue ever pops up, that it's automatically 100% your fault as a photographer. That is not what I'm saying at all. Of course, like there are clients that are not possible to please. We've all had them. I've had them. You know, there's people in the world that just go through their lives that way. And that occasionally happens to business owners. And, but I think really, your most unhappy customers can be, if you choose to approach it this way, your greatest source of learning. You know, back in my marketing degree, I was in a service marketing class. And I found out a really interesting statistic that actually a client is more likely to review a business positively if they had a bad experience, communicated it, and then the business went above and beyond to fix it, than if they had had like a perfectly normal, seamless experience in the first place. Which I'm not saying go make mistakes and then over deliver and that's how you get 5-star reviews. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying is like, there's room to learn and there's room to grow here and there's room to make mistakes. And the important thing is to learn from them and to fix things when they go wrong. And so, yeah. So going back to this, another thing I want to communicate is it is also important to have professional boundaries. I'm not saying like, you know, anything a client asks you, give in, you know, never run away from a client who's like clearly showing like many serious red flags. Like it's important to have boundaries as a business owner. And customer service is always like, again, that's that subjective kind of gray area of like, okay, how can I create an amazing experience and also live my life and also like have boundaries, but I also want to go above and beyond for all of my clients. And there's no exactly right or wrong answer here. That's going to be different for every single photographer. So I'm going to share like how I perceive it. But again, it's, you know, whatever works for you, what's ever going to help you feel fulfilled as a person who is giving the best experience you can possibly give to your clients. That's the goal. So there's a couple of things that I want to touch on, because they're conversations about customer service that I've seen in many other photographer Facebook groups. And one of them is around communication. I see this question pop up all the time, and it's a real question of like, I have a client contacting me at all hours of the night. How do I set up communication boundaries with them? And in the same vein, hearing like, you know, this client inquired 12 hours ago and they're already email me again, mad that I didn't respond. It's been only 12 hours. Like, I was sleeping for 8 of those, like, you know, and what do I do? Like, I can't be on my phone all the time. And so, again, I'm not saying you need to, but I would say, like, especially now in 2019, going into 2020, there is an expectation of most customers these days for instant communication. Like, it is an expectation that is out there. Like, when they inquire with a business, they don't know what your team looks like. They don't know what your back end looks like. At that moment, they're not thinking about, I'm reaching out to a real human being here. They are in that moment thinking about themselves and their need for a photographer. And they're excited. They're at their highest point of excitement when they fill out your contact form. And they're just sitting there waiting. And like, the sooner that you can reply to initial inquiries, the better. I know I've said that over and over and over, but I would say, out of all of the things that is so important for customer service, given that a customer's experience with you starts at that very first point of contact, is if you don't have time to answer inquiries within 12 to 24 hours, I absolutely think there is a high return on investment for hiring a virtual assistant to and like outsourcing that initial inquiry response. I can't tell you how many times we get responses to that initial inquiry email because it goes within 4 hours or 8 hours or 12 hours. And I think the max possible response time for us is like 18 hours for initial inquiry. And people saying, oh, like probably half of the responses to initial inquiries that we get are, thank you so much for responding so quickly. And that right out of the gate is going to set you like above and beyond a lot of other business owners and a lot of other vendors that they're talking to and the other photographers that they are talking to. So I am both for professional boundaries and work-life balance, and there are things in customer service that are just now in 2019 with digital, the age of digital communication and like, you know, instant feedback that a lot of people are wanting, that like, I just think are at this point, like kind of becoming like really kind of becoming requirements. So, and I know not everyone's going to agree with me on that, and that's okay. But so, I would say secondly, if that just like isn't something that you can do, if this is just not feasible for you, although I would say like responding extremely quickly, like there's no doubt in my mind that you would at least book one more wedding or elopement per year, and that is a lot of hours of a virtual assistant's time. Like it is a lot. Like the return on investment there, almost at any level, is like, I think, a no-brainer personally. But check out my outsourcing video because I have a lot more details on that. And so, but if for whatever reason you're like, no, that's just not possible for me, but I, you know, still want to be communicating, an autoresponder like really isn't a bad idea. Again, because it's about communicating. It gives someone that like instant feedback of like, hey, your submission form went through. There are a lot of photographers like contact forms and submission pages that like don't have a thank you page. They don't have any kind of feedback loop that even lets a client know that like, yes, your contact form went through. And so there's more information about that in my video called Don't Get Ghosted, PS. So check that out if you haven't yet. So you can just say like, hey, my business hours are this, set out clear expectations, that set out realistic expectations that you can always over deliver on. So if you realistically look at yourself and say, hey, with where I'm at, with what's going on in my life right now, there's just no possible way for me to guarantee responses to emails in less than 24 hours. And if that's you, like your automated responder should say like 36 or 48 hours. It's just say something that you absolutely know that you can, that you can not only meet, but like exceed. So, and you can also say like, and the thing is you can also have this for clients you're currently working with. You know, it's another good way to set boundaries for people who may just be like all over the place, like contacting you on multiple platforms at all hours of the day, you know, just continually being a broken record and shifting people, being like saying like, email is the best way to get in touch with me. I respond to emails X and X, and you can expect a response from me within this amount of time, and always exceed that. And that solves like a huge amount of like boundaries and communication issues. People, I think, just want to know what's going on, because if they send you an email and if they don't get a response within 36 or 48 hours, like a lot of people assume like something's wrong. And I think like especially, and I've learned this more and more that I'm working with clients like all over the US, all over the world. Like, you know, they've paid someone thousands of dollars that they've never met and that they've never seen photos from. It's like an immense amount of trust that they're putting in you from the get-go. And so if like they shoot you an email and it's been 48 hours since you've responded, and this has happened to me before, which is why I've changed my workflow around it, is I'm saying like, is something wrong? Like, I'm kind of concerned here. That doesn't make them a bad, needy client. It makes them a client that needs to be better communicated with. And so if I set expectations of like, hey, like you can expect a response from me within 3 days or whatever it is, like you can always define for yourself like what your professional boundaries are, you know, what level of communication you can genuinely meet expectations, and then you just need to strategically set expectations that are longer than that, so that to make sure that you can exceed those. So that's one thing that I have an opinion on as far as professional boundaries. Two, I would say another thing that I see related to customer service popping up in a lot of photographer Facebook groups is I have the perspective with customer service to just not sweat the small stuff. Like, honestly, there are so many discussions that I see, and, you know, real questions that like are super valid for especially newer photographers to be asking of like, hey, my contract says that clients can't edit or crop my photos. And yet I saw a client post a photo on Instagram, put a filter on it, and you know, what do I do? And, you know, I've seen the gamut of advice from don't sweat it to, you know, hire a lawyer and sue them. And so I would say, like, for me specifically in this business that I have that is about serving eloping couples, I am not a commercial photographer, you know, that's selling each of my individual images for thousands of dollars for advertising or publications or any of that. At the end of the day, keeping clients happy is way more important than, you know, the little nitty gritty details around stuff like that. Like, in my opinion, it doesn't matter if a client crops your photos or puts a filter on it. They're posting their photos because you love it, like because they love you and love their images and are happy and stoked about them. And I just don't think people should rain on people's parades with that. But that's, again, something people feel free to disagree with me on. And I actually feel the same way about crediting. If I see a client post a photo and, like, you know, rave and like not credit me, it's 99% likely that they just forgot. Like, I forget to, like, accidentally forget to tag vendors in images all the time. Like, I wish that I was better at it on Instagram. I need to improve that. But you know, 99% of the time they just forgot. And so if it does bother you, a approach that I found effective is to just comment saying, like, I'm so glad you had such a great experience and, like, love your images as much as I do. You know, just, like, encourage them. And, like, that's kind of a gentle, like, reminder. But it's only a reminder if, like, you've set expectations that they should credit you, which I'll go over in this workflow in just a little bit. But once I've started, like, including just a reminder to credit when I've delivered images, I have like 90% of the time our clients credit us. We don't even have to worry. And if we ever see an image that's like getting a ton of engagement that's ours that wasn't credited, if it's a client who was posting it, just be like, oh my gosh, yay. And like 9 times out of 10 they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to tag you. Here you go, everybody, I loved my photographer, like hire them. That's how to create like a positive spin on this and, you know, keep a happy client versus being like, well, according to my contract, you guys are in breach and I'm super mad. So anyway, and I feel really the same way. And this is out on a limb, guys. There's gonna be a lot of people who are pissed that I'm saying this probably, is that I also personally, as a business, do not mind if clients request editing requests. Like it happens probably twice a year still, like even with the business that we have, where a client will say, hey, like I love the images, but you know, can you just make the sky just a little bit more blue? Like it was so blue, and like our blues and our presets are a little bit desaturated because I think it's a little more classy. But it's their wedding images. Like I'm not being hired to create a fine art piece on commission. I am documenting someone's real experience of their day. And the thing that matters most to me at the end of it is that a client loves their images. And so I, you know, occasionally do, like twice a year, have a client that says like, hey, can you make your greens a little more green or your sky a little bit more blue? And if it's, again, if like my contract says that they have to pay a lot extra for that, and I have on a case-by-case basis, obviously the opportunity to do that, because of course, there's also probably one client a year that is like asking for really extensive editing that's like way outside the scope of like what's included. If they're wanting some sort of body modification due to an insecurity on their end, like yes, I would quote that at a per image basis, because that isn't something that's an easy fix. But if it's like, hey, just adjust this HSL slider and bump up the blues a little bit and re-export and upload, like that's going to take me 15 minutes to make a really, really happy client. And so personally, like that is something that I consider like, don't sweat the small stuff, which, you know, maybe other photographers have a very different opinion on that, but I am way more attached and way more proud of having happy clients than I am to my art personally. And I see myself as an experience provider that the customer service that I'm providing is actually more important than the image quality, which sounds kind of crazy, but that's how I see it. So cool. So let's talk about kind of going above and beyond for your client, and like where strategically in your workflow are some important places to think about doing that, because it isn't just image delivery. I think that's, you know, most photographers, when you say under promise, over deliver, they think about image delivery times. And the truth is that there's so many more opportunities in your course of working with a couple to under promise and over deliver. So this is kind of like, okay, how do you go above and beyond? So again, starts with that first point of contact. That response needs to be quicker than they are expecting, whatever that is, and personalized. And again, if you want more information on that, go to my Don't Get Ghosted video, because that's something that we've strategized a ton and makes our response rate just go through the roof. So two, you know, what else can you kind of strategically under promise and over deliver? I learned a really interesting thing, again, in a services marketing class back in college, of there is like a spectrum from products to services, which is kind of interesting. And it's a spectrum of tangibility and intangibility. So what do I mean by this? So on this end of the spectrum, I'm talking about like pure physical products, like, sure, like, what's a really good example here? Pure physical product, like a computer. I'm gonna use a computer for an example. And then on this side, like a totally intangible product, I'm gonna say staying in a hotel, which is an experience. Like you don't take anything physical, you don't receive anything physical like through a hotel. Like you are getting a night of sleep just like you would in your own bed. So let's look at those two things on this spectrum of like tangible versus intangible. So the interesting thing is so like products are generally more on the tangible side of like, they're talking about physical items. And so when people are comparing products, they're looking at specs and, you know, details of like what, you know, what's the performance on this, what's the speed of this, what's the size, you know, all of those kind of things are looking at that. And on this side, with, you know, staying in a hotel, for an example, it is a kind of an intangible service experience. You know, when someone asks you like, how was your stay at that hotel? You're talking about an experience, not like a physical product that you're receiving that's doing a task for you. So the interesting thing is that businesses that really succeed and are at the top of the competition, wherever you are on the spectrum, the businesses that are offering like tangible products, they differentiate themselves, i.e. they outperform their competition, not necessarily with the tangible side of what they're offering. Like they could be offering the exact same specs as everybody else and they will still outperform and compete better in the market if they are differentiating themselves with the intangible parts of their business. What the heck does that mean? I'm talking about, I'm going to use Apple for an example. And I know lots of people have different opinions about Apple, but I'm going to use Apple as an example and maybe think about Apple more like 5 years ago. But so, you know, Apple, like they might have the exact same specs or maybe even lower specs than, you know, than some sort of PC computer. But how do they differentiate themselves? You know, with the intangible things, their brand, their branding, and like their kind of cult following of Apple products, that is a like intangible value that you get by having an Apple product. You know, they also tried a lot to differentiate themselves with their customer experience, and with their customer service with like Apple Care, and you know, the experience of like walking into an Apple store and like what kind of customer service you were to get there, and that kind of stuff. So on the other side, places like hotels, if you think about the difference between, you know, a Motel 6 and a, you know, Ritz-Carlton, what are the differences? They're all the tangible things. Like there's still a bed, you still get a night's sleep, but what makes your experience with a Motel 6 different than a Ritz-Carlton? It's, you know, from the moment that you walk in, it's like the richness of like all the tangible details. It's like, that's a 1,000 count linen, you know, duvet cover. There's like a champagne bottle by my bedside. There is a handwritten note from the manager saying, welcome. I've never stayed in a Ritz-Carlton, I'm making this all up, but there is, you know, the like velvet curtains, and I open the mini bar and there's like all these extremely nice alcohols in there. Like at the end of the day, that's not like incredibly relevant to me getting a good night's sleep, but it's like the human mind is more adept at like understanding the value of tangible things than intangible. And so service-based businesses differentiate themselves by their own tangible products. So that seemed like kind of a rabbit hole there, guys, but I will tie this back, I promise. So the other interesting thing to know, if you put yourself in the shoes of a client, and maybe some of you have had this experience before of like, as soon as you purchase something, as soon as you actually hit buy and that money comes out of your bank account, is human psychology wise the highest time that you have the most buyer's remorse, which is interesting. So think about this. It's like you know, from the first point of contact, you're delivering so much value, you know, through your initial email, through your follow-ups, through getting on the phone with them, you got them to the contract and the point of booking, they've paid their deposit. As soon as they hit pay on their deposit, like psychologically, that is, you know, if you look at the whole psychology of the buying process, that is the point in the buying process where there is the highest amount of regret and buyer's remorse because they just committed, they just hit buy. And it's funny, it's, you know, this happens with like weddings too, that whole like cold feet thing. It's like it happens right at that point of buying a product too. And I think this is especially important to understand as wedding and elopement photographers, because we get so much money up front for having not really delivered a thing. We've only promised that we're going to deliver something. We've promised that we're going to help them out. We've promised that we're going to show up and give them amazing photos, but we haven't actually delivered anything. And so as soon as I hit buy, you know, it just becomes really real for a person of like, okay, I just paid this photographer in another state or that I've never met, like thousands of dollars for something I've never seen. And I have no idea how it's going to be. So this is a really good reason to give a booking gift to people, and something, I'm going to say, tangible, and something of high quality and high value. Because think about this. If you're putting yourselves in the shoes of a client and, they had just paid a photographer their deposit and they're just like, okay, I guess I'll see how it goes. I'm, completely unsure about this, but I guess I was sure enough to pay them a bunch of money. So here we go. And then a couple of days later, they, there's a knock on the door, they open it, they've been delivered a package that they weren't expecting. Whoa. They open it up, and what's inside? That's a really cool exercise to kind of think about with your clients and with your target market. What is going to make them feel like so well taken care of, and just reassure them of like, okay, wow, I wasn't even expecting this, but right from the beginning of my experience with a photographer, it's like, wow, like I open this gift, there's a handwritten note, there's a really high quality something. And I'm personally a proponent of like one big high quality thing versus a bunch of small low quality things, because it's all about those tangible elements. That's how elements. That's how service businesses differentiate themselves is with really high quality tangible items, whether that's your business cards or your handwritten thank you note stationery, or the gift that you deliver a client. If you look at the psychology of the buying process, there's no single time in the whole process with the client that it's more important to give them a tangible gift than as soon as they have booked. So cool. And then, so how does this play out for our workflows? So the other thing that we do, like when we kind of looked at this and strategized it, it's so important to deliver as much value as quickly as you can as soon as a client books with you. So we send a tangible booking gift. We're in the middle of like strategizing and planning out what we're doing for 2020, which is exciting. And then two, we are, we send out a very valuable email, which is on the intangible side, but it's more instantaneous. And what does that have in it? It has our exclusive VIP like client guide for eloping couples, like exclusively for adventure instead couples. And it is long and it is well thought through, and it is highly, highly, highly valuable. Something they can refer back to multiple times throughout the entire process of working with us. And that email is also quick and immediate and personalized. And that email sets out expectations. One of the game-changing things of me providing a better experience for couples via a strategic workflow is in pretty much every single email that kind of guides them through the stages of working with me, of like, hey, you're booked. Here's your questionnaire. Here's your location ideas. Great. You picked your location. Now what? Here's some information for your timeline. I need you to fill out this questionnaire. So through those big stages in that workflow, and again, my course goes into extreme detail about what those steps are. At every single one of those stages in each of those automated emails through our CRM, through our customer relationship manager, which is currently Pixabay, it includes next steps. It like lays out the process super clearly, like, great, thank you for filling out your location list questionnaire. You can expect to get a location list back within 30 days. And guess what? We send it within 2 weeks. That's how that works. And so again, at every single stage of the process, you lay out the plan of like, great, you did this. This is what is next. This is what you can expect. And then you exceed it at every single step. So I exceed it in the location list section. There's extra check-ins that they weren't even expecting that weren't laid out in the next steps of like, hey, your elopement is 6 months out, cool. And then we also do that in the timeline phase of like, great, here's your questionnaire. We're trying to fill out fill out your timeline by this time, and you exceed at every single step of the process. And I could talk for a long time of how you exceed expectations on an elopement day. Right now, there's currently a free behind the scenes video from the elopement photographer course that shows a real life me at an all day elopement, and like, how really my job of being more than a photographer includes like, helping a couple put on their wedding attire, like zipping up a dress. Like honestly, if you look at our reviews on the Knot and Wedding Wire and Google, like it's really interesting to actually read what people say, because images are like a minimum required thing. Being a photographer, delivering good images, that is the bare minimum. That's going to get you the bare minimum type of reviews. But to get raving reviews, I believe as a service provider and a really experienced creator, you have to be delivering so much more than that. And that includes, you know, all these little intangible things of like, you know, coming so prepared and over prepared. There's a free video here too about like what to bring on a hiking elopement and how to help prepare you and your couple and like what gear that you need. You know, like there's reviews about like she brought hand warmers and it was amazing. She saved our elopement day. Like she let me borrow her nude leggings. And, you know, hey, she like brought snacks and like I was really hungry and I was so stressed out going into my elopement. And yeah, I mean, they're not talking about like the tones in my presets, guys. Like they're real people and they're talking about their real life experience. People will never forget how you make them feel. And so helping a client feel, you know, empathized with at every single step of the process and that I really care about them because I do, is a huge part of me being an amazing photographer and delivering an amazing experience. It is not, I repeat, not just about the photos that I am taking. You know, also exceeding expectations with a sneak peek is huge. We tell clients you get a sneak peek within a week, deliver it within a couple of days. Boom, done. And whatever that is for you. If you do it in 24 hours, do that. Tell them 48. And same with image delivery, both in numbers and in both in number of images delivered and also in the time frame. So we've actually significantly lowered the amount of images that we promise from an 8-hour elopement. One, because elopements tend to result in a lot less images than big weddings. They're just a way slower pace type of day. It's not this kind of go, 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 take 100 formals in an hour type of thing. So it's a really different kind of experience. And if the client is hiking for most of those 8 hours, you know, so we promised like 250 in our contract, and we consistently deliver more like 400 to 500. But it's, again, like you never know. And so like ask like, what's the bare minimum amount of photos if like all the stars aligned and it was like mostly hiking and, you know, half of it was dark because we were hiking up at night. Like what's the minimum amount of photos that would be possible to deliver you doing your very best job as a photographer? And then like go slightly lower than that. And that's what you should put in your contract, just to make sure that you're never having a client being like, wait, you said, you know, 500 to 700 and I only got 515. Like, did you not like my wedding? Like, it's all about perception. The customer's perception is your reality. And you have the opportunity through setting expectations to really like mold and affect their perception, which is why this is strategic as well as subjective. Cool. And then same thing with image delivery. So we you know, it was like, hey, we'll send you like 2 or 3 for your sneak peek. We send like 5 to 10. And same thing with images. One more thing in there that I will stick in here, and again, like my whole workflow and all the steps of this and how to automate it is all in the Elopement Photographer course. But one big thing that I added to my workflow, which has been game changing as far as getting 5-star reviews. This is like the one thing that I started doing, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago in my workflow that I was like, whoa, this works so well at soliciting organic, really amazing reviews, is send a day after thank you email that is super heartfelt and super personalized. And yes, you can send a thank you note, but that's going to take a few days. I kind of love the instantaneousness of the email and it happening like as soon as possible after an elopement of just like really pouring my heart out. And I've kind of aligned this with my workflow of like doing voice memos on my phone, like talking, you know, to stream of consciousness of what happened during that day that helps me blog about it later. And it also, you know, helps remind me of like, oh my gosh, this whole day was amazing. And so when I send a day after thank you email, it's like, hey, like, I'm just sitting over here like with a loss for words, because I had such an amazing time with you two, and I knew that we would get along, but like it was so cool to find out that you do this and you do that, and like I loved your guys' dog. Like, how is he doing? Did he blah blah blah? And you know, like I just am thinking back over the day, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. Like, I will never forget this day, and you know, remember that amazing sunrise that we saw on the alpenglow over that lake. My jaw's just been on the floor ever since like we parted ways, and like I'm already sorting through your photos, looking at your sneak peek, and I'm just like audibly saying wow over and over, and I just like am so excited to share this, and just like a genuine thank you guys. Thank you so much. It was an honor to be a part of your day. I hope you guys are doing amazing, and your honeymoon, you're going here, super ultra personalized. This is like, I think one of the most important emails in the whole workflow, you know, besides the initial inquiry, to be like so personalized. You've worked with this couple for like maybe a year at this point. You should have a lot of personalized things to say about them, and you've now just met with them, and they're like probably on a high after their elopement experiences with you. If you made an awesome experience for them, and then putting that into words and like sending it to them, I have got to tell you, the kinds of responses that we get to that day after thank you email are unbelievable. The things that people write down and respond, because you basically prompt it. You are prompting a written response like that's totally organic to their experience about their day, by like instigating sending a really thorough, detailed, heartfelt day after thank you email. Like 8 out of 10 times a client is going to respond in the same way. They're going to you're going to receive back like what you're putting out there. So if you're putting out like really heartfelt, long, detailed, like written account of how excited you were about the day, you're going to be soliciting that back totally organically and immediately when their emotions are the highest right after their elopement. That email is game changing, guys. If you don't send a day after thank you email, change that immediately right now, because it is one of the most powerful tools in the workflow that I added, that just made me from going from like asking for reviews like many weeks later to like getting that immediate, like fresh off their mind, like, and they're reviewing their experience with me. They haven't even seen their photos yet. That email is awesome. And the other thing to put in that email is I, again, reiterate and reset expectations. Like, I'm going through your images right now. You can expect a sneak peek of 2 to 3, you know, within the next week. Really excited or 3 to 5 within the next week, you know, and then I deliver in a couple of days, and even like 10. And you can expect your full gallery of, you know, at least 250 images within, you know, 10, we say 10 weeks, and deliver in about 5. So whatever that is for you, there's no right or wrong. Figure out what works, and then have it, and then set expectations around it. And then, yeah, so that day after thank you email is huge. Again, you gotta keep on top of your turnaround times. If you can't outsource. I think, watch my outsourcing video, but editing outsourcing is the other, in my opinion, no-brainer that I personally think almost every photographer on the planet should outsource, because it's so cheap. And it doesn't mean you lose control over the quality of your images. It just takes you like 95% less time to make sure they're perfect. Cool. So then what happens? Let's now kind of shift gears and talk into the nitty gritty of how to ask for a review, which probably most of you thought that's what I would spend the entire time talking about. But it's such a big topic, and it's so important to like zoom out and realize like what a client is saying in their review of you has very little to do with like what this review email says. Like, it's a part of it, but it like backs up to their whole experience over the entire time of working with you. I will stop belaboring that point. Probably not, I'll probably say it again. And so how to ask for reviews. I've tested and continue to test a lot of different things around this. So let's talk about, first of all, how. I've personally found it most effective to ask for it via an email. And what works really well is, again, 8 out of 10 couples for us will respond so incredibly forthcoming and just going on and on and on, thanking us in that response to that thank you email that we prompt, that we send. And So really, they're basically sending us a written review that they don't even know is a written review within a couple of days. And as soon as their images are delivered, again, 8 out of 10 times, we you know, in our image delivery, we also this is another question that I've seen pop up for a lot of photographers, like, what do you do with delivered images and you never heard back? And like, I used to struggle with that. I used to be like, oh my gosh, they clearly hate them and they hate me because they didn't say anything. And 9 times out of 10, that's not true. Like, probably more than that. People are busy and people don't think that that's something that they should do all the time. And it doesn't make them bad people or ungrateful people. It's just like the reality. And so once I started adding a line to the delivery email of like, I'm really excited to hear about what you guys think about these. I hope you're doing well, and ask like a personal question that they kind of need to respond to that's not even about the images. Got way more responses, and they're overwhelmingly positive, guys. 95% or more of your clients are going to love the images that you create if you're a good photographer. So once you deliver the images and the response then gets prompted back, 9 times out of 10 is like, wow, we're just overwhelmingly happy and it's amazing. And it tends to be like a little bit less raving than the first one that was all about the experience. They're just, again, super happy, and they've already said that in a previous email. And that is a perfect email to then organically respond to and ask for a review, because then you have 2 different points of assurity that that client had an amazing experience with you. They rave about your experience immediately after their elopement, and they love I've also said that they love their images. They're a prime candidate to ask for reviews. And you don't have to ask every single client that you have for a review. Like, that isn't required. And so we ask for reviews for couples that have given us that, like, those 2 points of contact and assured us that like they're 1,000,000% happy. And again, like, almost all of our couples are happy, but every single photographer on the planet, no matter how good your specialized marketing is, there's someone that you're going to work with that just wasn't the best fit. It just happens. That's the reality of business. It doesn't make you a bad marketer, a bad business owner. We continue to learn every single day, every single year of like, okay, let's tighten this up. Let's communicate this better up front. Let's change this in our workflows. The cool thing about having a really strategic written out workflow is you can literally go back into the point of the process and adjust something, and then it'll be fixed immediately for the next time and kind of automated in your process. So that's super cool. And so we respond to that email that says they love their photos, and we ask for a review. So how you ask for a review will determine what kind of reviews that you get. Because if you just say, can you review me? One, will they remember? They don't know where to review you. They don't know what you want them to say. So when I first started photography, I got a lot of like, Maddie is great, highly recommend. Like, that's great. They maybe were just as happy as the same clients I have now who are writing paragraphs. So the question is like, how do you get the paragraphs? So this process of like what this review email says has changed for me over time. Like, I learned first that it's a great idea to like ask specific questions that help guide people of like what to say in their review. But this got even more transformative after I read my one of my very favorite books ever, Building a Story Brand. If you guys haven't read this book, like, totally check it out. I'm gonna read something from the very end of it. It's on page 198 of my hard copy. And it's about like how to collect really amazing reviews that share stories of transformation, because, being a service provider is all about transforming people. It's all about taking a client who is like, for us, like really unsure about how they want to get married, where they want to marry, like what their elopement day is going to look like, and like guide them through that and transform it into then like a really clear vision and then an amazing reality that just is unbelievable and we'll never forget. So he has, Donald Miller has some really good questions in here that prompted me to like changing the questions that I asked. And so I'm just going to read this. He says, here are 5 questions most likely to generate the best response for a customer testimonial. And it says, what is the problem you were having before you discovered our product? What did the frustration feel like as you tried to solve that problem? What was different about our product? And take a moment, take us to the moment when you realized that our product was actually working to solve your problem, and tell us what life looks like now that your problem is solved or is being solved. And this book is a amazing marketing book, and it's really general for any type of product or service business. But if you didn't catch that there, and if you haven't read Building a Story Brand, but marketing is all about storytelling. It's all about making your client the hero of their own story, and you are the guide, you are the Yoda in this kind of scenario. And in a sense, like you are asking them, how was I your Yoda? How did I guide you? How did I take you from confused and struggling and like really unsure to having a clear plan and clear vision, and then like helping you live the best day of your lives on your elopement, and telling that story of transformation, including like how they felt before they met you, telling that like powerful story of transformation. That's the most powerful type of marketing, this sharing stories of transformation. That is the template for every single blockbuster movie that's ever existed. I'm not going to spoil it, because if you haven't read it, you should read this book. So anyway, how did I change? So what are the questions that I ask in this email? I have basically taken that idea and I have, adjusted it and made it for elopement. So I ask couples, let me pull up the actual email here, because this is interesting. I say, let me pull it up. This, like, I just sent this to a client like a day ago. Hi, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you love the photos as much as I do. I'm just like so incredibly obsessed with them. Your day was incredible. Again, like reiterate some of those details. If you could let other people know like what your experience with me was like, I would just absolutely love that. And it would be so helpful if you publicly reviewed me on the Knot, Wedding Wire, and Google. You can copy and paste the same review to all three. So one, make it really easy for people to review you. Tell them the exact spots that you want them to review. Include exact links. Include the exact link to your Knot profile, exact one to Wedding Wire. Both of those still have free listings available. And then Google. Also, Google is huge. Google reviews for SEO, especially for like more local, local centric businesses that really affects like local SEO. It's just so good. So we ask couples to post a review, and that they can post the same one on all three, making it as easy as possible. And then I say, if you're unsure of what to write, here are some ideas to get you started. And these are the questions that I then ask. I ask, what was the biggest challenge that you faced in eloping, or like faced in like, planning the day that you guys would get married, which is more broad of weddings or elopements. And how did that challenge make you feel? So it's kind of like helping people like step back in time and kind of like, remember where you at, where you were at when this all started. Like, just think back for a moment. Like, where were you? Like, what were you guys feeling? What was the biggest challenge that you were facing? And then, what changed after you hired me? And, you can see I'm like guiding people through like thinking back, remembering that there's been a year, an 8-month, 9-month, 10-month, 12-month year process with me. Not just their elopement day, and not just their and not just their images. And then I say, how did you feel about your elopement experience with me on your day, and of the images that you received? And then I say, are there any specific results or changes that you can share that, like, in this story? And then the last question, what would you say to somebody who was on the fence about hiring me? And again, that also helps them transport themselves back into time right before they booked you. they, more than anyone else, knows exactly what are the biggest barriers to someone booking. They have them themselves. They just found a way to overcome them. So they're the best person to tell future couples how to overcome those exact same barriers. And so really, when you ask questions in this way, and it again, you phrase it super casually of just like, you know, if you're unsure what to write, here's some ideas. I personally don't send like a, you know, required questionnaire you have to answer every single one of these. Although, you know, sending a post-elopement questionnaire isn't a bad idea. You can get some really interesting marketing information from it. It's an idea that I wanted to test for a while, and I probably will. But I really give it as more of like a guideline of just because, and I think that most people find that really helpful of like, I don't know what to say. Oh, cool. She's giving me some questions. Like I can tackle this now. So once I started asking specific questions, once I changed those questions to asking questions that are really going to tell their story of transformation, and again, help future couples break down the barriers that they themselves faced in hiring me, and like sharing like a really, really powerful, inviting, and enticing story about working with me, that's gonna be the best marketing ever. So the other thing that I can do in the same email, and it's just like, oh, and just, you know, just for ease and convenience, I've also, you know, just copy and pasted a few words that you already sent me, you know, like a few weeks ago in your thank you email. Honestly, if you just want to copy and paste that, that is good. So really, like getting long raving 5-star paragraph reviews, you can see how this can be just like a simple step-by-step like strategic process. Not that it doesn't require a huge amount of hard work and strategy and planning and preparation and going above and beyond for your couple at every single step, because it does. But there are also these kind of nitty-gritty tangible details here about the, you know, kind of digging into the how of asking for reviews. Cool. So I'm nearly wrapping up here, guys. So if you have questions that I haven't addressed yet, like pop them in the chat right now. I'm going to go into the Facebook group and answer a couple of questions that that people asked earlier. So let's see here. Cool. Awesome. We talked about how to prompt clients to write longer reviews, ask specific questions. Check out this book, Make Your Own, that are applicable to your workflow, your process, your clients, your target market. Someone asked, do I follow up with clients when they haven't written a review yet? Corey asked, if so, how do you go about wording it so it doesn't sound desperate or pushy, but still gives a sense of urgency? And so a really good one for that, especially for The Knot and for Wedding Wire, both of those kind of deadlines for getting like Best of The Knot and Best of Wedding Wire, whatever it's called, are towards the end of the season. So, you know, towards the end of the season, towards holiday times, they're probably like, you know, looking at their photos again, like thinking about what they're going to order, and that kind of stuff too. And it can be like if the client, you know, if I had a client back in June that was amazing and I asked for a review, they said they would, and then it just didn't happen. I can and have like followed up with people, and it's usually just like, hey, like hope the rest of your summer was amazing. Like I'm, you know, still like revisiting your guys' images and just so in awe, and like I just want to put this at the top of your inbox because I know that you're really busy. You know, I'm up for an award based on couples reviews, and if you could review me by this date, that's like it's October 31st for The Knot, I want to say, and it's like December 31st for Wedding Wire. Like if I give people specific dates and then say like, here are the links, here's the stuff, super easy, like it would mean the world to me. And yeah, like I will follow up once. I probably won't follow up more than that unless it was like, you know, we're in constant communication and like they're, you know, commenting on our Instagram every day and we're, you know, become besties, which does happen too. And then if that case, I'd be like, hey girl, can you review me? That'd be great. Like, but I would say in general, I will follow up once and it will just be again as like a common courtesy. And I found a good way to prompt it is to give a deadline and say like, I'm up for an award based on reviews and I need, 4 more or whatever it is. And, or, even if you don't need 4 more, like saying, I need X many more and I need them by this date. That's what qualifies me. Like people are good at working towards deadlines versus saying like at some point. So giving someone a deadline is awesome. Cool. There was maybe I answered it somewhere. Do I have a questionnaire that I send them to give ideas about what to write about? You can try to send it in a questionnaire form. I'm thinking about testing it out and see how it works. Currently, I just kind of give like a list of questions as a general guideline. But again, I actually think them kind of looking back at the words that they first said in their response to my thank you email can be even better at kind of jogging their memory. And then I've given them like a format to kind of tell the story and the tangible stuff that they've already written. I'm trying to just make it as easy and simple as possible for them. Cool. What are your thoughts on asking clients from years past? If they had an incredible experience with you and it's worth sharing, would it be worthwhile to request a review? Yes, you can definitely ask people from past years. I'm a very speak to the process person. So you can say like, hey, like, remember this, like, hey, how are you guys? Like, remember that remember that day I was looking through your photos the other day and that this prompted this. And, I am also, and I'm trying to market my business better and get better at asking for reviews. And again, it would mean the world to me, blah, 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 and then send the same kind of thing. You can definitely prompt reviews from past couples. You're probably gonna get the best, most effective reviews the sooner that you can ask for them. And again, like the responses to those day after thank you emails are just gold for that. So I would suggest like adding that to your workflow as soon as possible. And like from here on out, asking for reviews as soon as possible. Yes, you can definitely ask past clients. So, cool. I think I've addressed most of these. I'm just double checking. Cool. Oh, this came up a couple of times. Can you incentivize reviews? So this is a topic that, there is a lot of information circling out there that it's illegal to incentivize reviews. It is true that it is illegal to incentivize positive reviews, saying, I will give you this gift if you review me 5 stars, if you review me positively. It is not illegal. It is not against the FTC to incentivize reviews just in general. Like you can offer an incentive for someone reviewing you as long as nowhere in that email are you even like giving a hint that it must be a positive review. So you have to be very, very careful with it, which in general is why like we don't personally incentivize reviews. Because one, if you go through this kind of workflow and if you do these things, you get so many amazing ones anyway, you don't really need to incentivize them. And it's going to feel more organic and natural, and you will have created a continuing evangelist for your brand and for your business if you do this organically more than the incentivizing approach. But yeah, that is an interesting fact of like, you can, if you want to, be like, if you review me, I will send you $100 print credit, as long as in no way that you indicate that it must be a positive review. So something to know that we don't personally incentivize, but if you are very, very careful about it, you can. And, if you're unsure, probably talk to a lawyer or somebody about it, which is why we don't just like personally mess with it. So cool. Awesome. And as far as where to review, this is going to depend on your specialty and what kind of vendor listings that you have. For us, we've found Wedding Wire, the Knot, and Google to be the most effective. I've heard too many issues with Yelp and like spam fake reviews that they then want you to pay to take down or whatever. I just like tried to avoid a Yelp page existing for my business. But I like Wedding Wire, the Knot, and Google because they all have clauses about fraudulent reviews. It has happened to our business before that we've gotten some kind of troll somewhere leaving us a fraudulent review, and those sites like will take it down. Like if it wasn't a real client that never worked with you, and then, you know, like I've had it happen twice in the last 10 years that I had to have reviews removed. And yeah, so cool. And Gabby's saying, I'm hopping into the chat here now, guys. So I hear Gabby saying, legally, the reviewer may have to disclose their review was incentivized. Yes, I know that that is true for, like, you will see that with like certain products on Amazon and things. To be honest, I don't like getting into the sticky situation of giving people legal advice. So my overwhelming advice here is like, no, don't incentivize them. You don't need to, first of all. And again, like there are complications around incentivizing reviews, which is why like we don't personally do it. But I thought for the longest time that it is like overwhelmingly, no matter what way you do it, illegal to incentivize in any way. And it was just interesting to find out that like, no, technically you can, but only in like the very specific circumstance. And there's like a bunch of rules around it, which is why I don't mess with it. But cool. Crystal's asking, do I give another gift after the elopement as well, or after they give you like a review? Cool. And back in the day when you weren't as famous as you are now. So I haven't done like post-elopement gifts before. It's something that we're kind of looking into and testing for 2020. But again, after really looking at the psychology of the whole buyer's process, I think if you can only do one tangible gift, that it's more important to do a tangible gift as soon as someone books you than actually after everything. And the other thing that we're working on is doing more tangible things in general post-elopement with like albums and print sales, and we're like testing some cool methods around that at the moment too. And so, yeah, it's definitely something that we're looking to, and I know a lot of people do give amazing post-elopement gifts. There's nothing like, obviously it couldn't hurt. Obviously that's a great idea. But I do think it's kind of an interesting concept that if you're gonna give one awesome tangible gift, that it can actually be more effective in your whole process to do it when someone books. So that's when their buyer's remorse and their potential regret of hiring you is the highest. Whereas after they worked with you at their elopement, like they know you're awesome and like you've given them so much value throughout this entire process. And like it definitely can be the icing on the cake, and that is great. But yeah, it's not something that we currently do in our workflow. It can be something awesome to test and to test and to try. Definitely couldn't hurt at all. And I think it's great that other photographers do that. Sweet. Cool. Give them a print shop. Give them a print shop. They buy more. Yes, we do currently have a print shop, and I should actually probably mention that that I have like tested in the past, giving a print credit, because then people will buy some and then they'll realize how awesome prints are and then they will buy more. But we're working through the process of like really strategizing and figuring out like the exact perfect strategy for, not that there's one perfect strategy, for really help like encouraging eloping couples to get tangible items, because our eloping couples tend to be less kind of material focused, less about the tangible things than couples having big weddings. That's been kind of a shift. And I'm working through a bunch of cool ways of like marketing prints and products and albums. So I'm testing a bunch of theories right now. So that's gonna be fun. Cool, I'm gonna check the chat for any more questions, guys. Cool, it's been super, super great to hang out with you all. And feel free to ask me more questions in the group. Join Weddings and Wanderlust Adventure Photographers. If you're not in it, facebook.com/group/Weddings and Wanderlust. And that's how you can ask more questions about future live videos too, and suggest topics. And great, you guys are super awesome. Hope you guys learned a bunch from this, and I'm excited to talk to you guys again. All right, bye.